because we haven't checked out any of his videos for a while, and this looks like it could be pretty badass. So we're gonna do a tactically acquired. We haven't watched one of his for a little while now, and he's got a video about the most gangster supply truck of all time. So I think this could be pretty awesome. So let's take a look and see what was the most gangster supply truck of all time.
You know what's crazy is that out of the hundreds of gun trucks that were built in Vietnam, for some stupid reason, literally only one was preserved for history. So let's talk about it.
Wait. Fire. All the way.
On today's episode of America's High Octane Attitude Adjustments, we're gonna see what happens when truck drivers have had it up to here with your bullshit. Almost overnight, supply convoys became the primary target for ambush, so in order to protect themselves, truck drivers took ordinary supply trucks, slapped on some tactically acquired full-auto armament, and created what we know today as gun trucks. Estimates put the numbers of gun trucks built in Vietnam to be somewhere in the ballpark of 300 to 400, and yet, despite all the insane levels of improvisation, innovation, and VC eradication, no one thought it was a good idea to preserve these things for history. Well, everyone except for one man. And we're going to get into all that and more right after a word from today's sponsor. This video is sponsored by TangoAlpha.store. We have a limited edition Eva Destruction shirt that will only be sold for the next 90 days and 90 days only. After that, it'll be gone forever.
Of course, established July 4th.
Head over to TangoAlpha.store and get it while you can. Now let's get back to the video. Alright, so in case you haven't paused this video to watch my other one, here's a super quick backstory so that we're all on the same page. War's been brewing in Vietnam since 1950, America tags in 1965, and the Army's air cav is currently
gun trucks, for when the trees start speaking Vietnamese.
the enemy like an abusive stepfather. However, all of that changes on September 2nd, 1967, when the NBA launched a brutal ambush on a 90-truck supply convoy. Now, in response to this, truck drivers get pissed off and they built gun trucks from whatever they could acquire. These guys went out there and stole steel, they bartered for Brownings, they pilfered pigs, and somehow even managed to manifest miniguns.
Okay, so I have to correct him on one thing there. They didn't steal, they strategically transferred equipment to an alternative location. Key distinction! There's the key distinction there.
Bartered for Brownings, they pilfered pigs, and somehow even managed to manifest miniguns.
It's a thorny legal issue, all right. I'll need to refer to the case of finders versus keepers.
Sweet, now that we're all caught up, we can meet our story's first protagonist, Steve Calibro. Steve joined the 523rd Transportation Company in June 1968, and right from the start, he knew this job was going to be rough. The 523rd had already been in 10 major convoy ambushes that year alone, so when he was given a 2.5-ton truck, he quickly figured out that this was not going to cut it. What he really wanted was a 5-ton truck. With a 5-ton, he could pile on more weapons, more armor, and crucially, more ammo than he could ever with that deuce-and-a-half. Now, I'm not sure if Steve actually got permission to use one of the company's 5 tons or if he liberated it under pirate rules, but what we do know is that he managed to get his hands on a 5-ton one way or another.
Finders keepers.
Well, now that Steve had his truck, he took the old gun box off that deuce-and-a-half, he mounted it on his new 5-ton truck, where he then proceeded to make a whole host of improvements. In addition to quarter-inch steel plating and sandbags, he also added a couple of M60s. But problem though, his M60s were not pedestal mounted, which means that in order to use it, his gunner would have to manually lift it in place during a firefight. Which, if we're being honest, isn't ideal, and Steve thought the exact same thing. And with that, Steve does the most on-brand E4 shit that you can possibly do. He wanders around the motor pool looking for anything that isn't bolted down, or at least isn't bolted down very well, and he takes it. And wouldn't you know it, he ran across a tripod in the back of a Jeep and a couple of Browning M250 cals that he also found. And in order to ensure that his new tactical acquisition stayed in his possession, he had a buddy weld up a mount for it so that he could A, fire both at the same time, and B, make it harder to steal, acquire back.
It's not rocket science. Any moron with a crucible and a acetylene torch and a cast iron waffle maker could have done the same.
Well, now that his truck was coming together, all he needed now was a name for it. Around this time, a song called...
One thing, hang on. I want to look at something. Hang on.
He had a buddy weld up a mount for it.
Give me a second. Oh. Okay, am I crazy or that's shooting out the back? What's he gonna... I know he's going to get into it. I realize he's going to get into it, but all I'm thinking, like, okay, you have coverage for the rear, but what about the sides and the front? But I'm guessing he's going to get into that.
What he needed now was a name for it. Around this time, a song called Eve of Destruction was very popular, so naturally, Steve names his truck Eve of Destruction. And I absolutely love the fact that he named...
Okay, hang on. I want to see that.
So
I want to see that photo.
Steve names his truck Eve of...
Okay, so we've got the twin 50s on the back. I'm guessing that's a 60, and that's on the swivel mod. Okay, so there's your forward cover. And I'm going to hazard a guess he's got another 60 on a swivel. I'm guessing that may be it right there, the secondary 60 on a swivel. So he's got the dual 50s on the back. Nice. And then he's got two dual, I'm guessing these are 60s on swivels on the front. And that'll cover your front and sides. Okay, nice. Okay.
And I absolutely love
and
the
then,
fact
yeah,
that
the
he
gun
named his
slots. I
truck
saw that.
after an anti-war song while currently participating in an active war. By the end of 1968, the 523rd had a total of 5 gun trucks to include Eve of Destruction, King Kong, Core's Revenge, the Filthy Four, and Ace of Spades.
I gotta look at... This is a 5-ton? Hold up. Hold up. I want to see that when it was unobstructed. That... Jeez, that... Wait. Oh my God. Yeah, they literally took a 113, dropped it into the bed of a 5-ton and said, job done. That's a 113 armored personnel carrier right there. Oh my God, that is... Okay, no shade on the Eve of Destruction. That is gangster as fuck right there. To literally mount an M113 armored personnel carrier into the bed of a 5-ton is bad fucking ass right there. It looks like they did it here too. They did it with King Kong. That may be a 113 on King Kong as well. Cause yeah, you got the turret. So yeah, they did it for King Kong as well. They just dropped the 113 shell. So they took the treads off 113s, dropped them in the bed, and chained it down. And then you've got the fucking turret still on them. Holy crap! This is amazing. This is fucking amazing. I love this.
Four and Ace of Spades. And with this quintet of chaos complete, the 523rd was ready to put.
What
it
a
to
lovely
overtime.
day.
By my deeds, I honor him. V8.
Now, while Steve undeniably had a winner on his hands, there was still one thing that he couldn't escape, and that was people who outranked him coming around his truck telling him how to do his job. New lieutenant convoy commanders would come in and take charge of soldiers who had been in the thick of it, fighting and surviving ambush after ambush after ambush for months at a time, and these fresh butter bars would come and try to tell him how to position his truck in the convoy. And Steve wasn't shy about his feelings on how he thought things should run, as he would say, quote, "When shit is flying, you ain't worried about positioning the son of a bitch." An ambush was different. Fights were not won by tactics, but by superior firepower. You just went in there and opened fire on everything that you can see or cannot see. You want to throw as much lead as you can. Half the time, we didn't even see them. We wanted to unleash with everything we had and as much as we could put out there at one time.
Excuse me? Go sit at the kiddie table. I ain't finished with you. I ain't finished my hand, so sit your ass down.
And it wasn't just officers that Steve didn't have patience for. There was this one E6 staff sergeant that was always hanging around the company area, and he would constantly bug Steve to go out on Eve for a ride along.
What are you waiting for? Kiss? F off.
And Steve just kept shooting this guy down and shooting him down and shooting him down until finally one day Steve relented. And you know what? You just got to give props to the old staff sergeant, because sometimes there is power in aggressive persistence. On November 13th, 1968, Steve told the staff sergeant that he could come on a ride along, but only if he understood his place on his truck. Steve laid it out for him, and I quote, "You're an E6 and I'm an E5. Before you get on, you need to understand who's in charge of this truck. I'm taking no shit from you. It's my truck. I'm in charge." Translation for modern audiences.
You are a fucking nobody.
So with that established, they head out and the convoy makes it to their destination, no problem at all. Now they've been on the road for a few hours at this point, so on the way back, the staff sergeant decides to give the driver a break and he takes the wheel. The staff sergeant wasn't in the driver's seat for 5 minutes when a rocket slams into Eve right between the gun box and the cab. The explosion rocked Eva Destruction, blowing out the glass, ripping armor off the doors, and shredding the staff sergeant's legs with shrapnel. Now Steve is desperately trying to get the staff sergeant to drive the truck out of there, but no luck. This guy is seriously messed up, and Eve rolls off into the grass and comes to a stop about 10 feet from a culvert. Steve then stands up and he's looking around trying to decide what to do next, and then he sees about 60 to 70 NVA pouring out of that culvert. The NVA get within feet of the Eve and start emptying entire magazines into her. It was starting to look like Eve was going to get overrun, but then Steve hears what must be the sweetest sound in the entire world. The unmistakable bark of a quad 50 gun truck, possibly bounty hunter, coming up behind them. This fight was so intense and went on for so long that the entire floor of the Eve was ankle deep in brass. To put this in perspective, Steve even managed to melt the barrel on one of his 50s, which he only realized because he saw the red tracers floating up and then back down like a feather instead of flying straight. But that's not even the craziest part. There was one more insane thing that honestly should have killed him. See, what had happened was, at one point during the fight, he grabbed his M79 grenade launcher. He then proceeds to fire one round, load another, fired that one too, and then when he went to shove in a third round, it wouldn't go in. Turns out the first 2 rounds were still stuck in the barrel, and the fact that it didn't blow up in his face is nothing short of a damn miracle.
Holy, he had a double fucking squib? Is that even possible? That is a double squib of 2 40mm grenades on a shorty little M79. Like, not a single squib, 2 squids. He fired the first one, it squibbed. He loaded the second shell in there, fired, it impacted the first squib and stopped and did not explode. Now, not exploding is not so crazy. The fact that they didn't explode is actually legitimately not that crazy. One thing you have to remember is the 40mm grenades that go into the M79, later into the 203, and into the Mark 19 do have a fuse, and that fuse is triggered after the grenade is fired and then rotates. I think it's 18 times, if I'm remembering correctly. I believe it requires 18 rotations, and that activates the fuse, which will cause the grenade to explode upon impact. So if these things squibbed, the fuse did not engage. It didn't rotate enough. There were nowhere close to enough rotations to engage the fuse and therefore make the grenade live. So while the explosive charge was obviously still in the grenade, the fuse had not engaged, and therefore the impact of the second one was basically just brass hitting brass, and that's it. So that they did not explode isn't honestly so crazy when you have some idea of how these 40mm grenades operate in terms of rotational fuse, gyroscopic fuse rotations. The fact that 2 of them squib like that is kind of nuts. But again, the fact that the first one squibbed, okay, it happens. The fact that the second one did not launch the first one out by sheer force. Remember when we saw Brandon using the M79? Remember we watched Brandon's video on the M79? Those things actually don't have a hell of a lot of gunpowder firing out of the barrel. They don't have the same kind of range that, say, like an M16 does. So there's not as powerful of a charge propelling the grenade out through the barrel as you might think. So the impact of the second grenade impacting the squib wouldn't be as powerful as you might think. So, well, yes, there's obviously risk that the grenades could have exploded. That certainly was a risk that, you know, something happens where like the grenades strike each other just right, causing a spark or something that can reach the interior of the grenade and engage the charge in there. Yes, it is a possibility that it's actually not, it's actually far more likely that it wouldn't have happened given what we know about the charge on the, you know, given the gunpowder charge to propel the grenade and how the fuse on the grenade works. It's not so crazy, honestly.
I don't know, it just didn't explode. That's weird.
Everyone on the Eve minus one of the gunners was injured, and the staff sergeant was unfortunately killed in the exchange. Now, I couldn't find any concrete evidence to support this, but from what I could gather, I couldn't find anything that showed that Steve took any more ride-alongs after this ambush. After returning to base, the company motor sergeant pulled an all-nighter in an attempt to rebuild the Eve. He put the gun box on another 5-ton truck, slapped on new armor for the doors, new paint, and even gave it the same bumper number as the original. Steve wanted her back on the road as if nothing had ever happened. He took a week to recover, and then he was right back at it, manning his gun truck. Now fast forward a bit to January 22nd, 1969, and Eve Destruction was on the road with another convoy. Eve was pulling up the rear as the tail-end gun truck of the lead serial when Eve heard the convoy behind him get hit. Eve spun around to investigate and found 4 cargo trucks burning and 4 drivers lying in the road bleeding out. Eve, along with the other gun trucks from the rear convoy, unleashed a wall of bullets into the ambush. They had so many trucks online and so many guns to choose from that it was hard to decide which diplomacy dispenser to use first.
Wow. Now that's impressive.
So many guns, I don't know which one to use.
No, Mike, don't pick the 50 cal. It's more likely to jam up on you than work properly.
Ambush went on for so long that Steve's twin 50s couldn't be put on safe because it started cooking off rounds. There was literally nothing that he could do about it, so he just tilted the barrel skyward, pulled the pin so it would just stay there, and then let the guns just do their thing. The convoy commander called for a ceasefire, but Steve obviously couldn't comply with that order, and the officer insisted that Steve open the feed tray and yank out the ammo belt. Now guys, Steve already doesn't take shit.
Actually, you know what I'm a little surprised about? Why didn't, okay, so basically Steve had what's known as a runaway gun. That, you know, it was getting so, it was getting, you know, it was getting so bad, you know, so hot, the rounds were cooking off. The second they hit the breech, obviously the safety wouldn't work. Why didn't he just kink the belt? Yeah, exactly, that's where I'm going. Why didn't he just grab an unfed part of the belt and either kink it or just, break the link? Yeah, that's stuff that they teach you in basic training. That if you have a belt-fed machine gun and you go and not with it, I think it's so well. No, you couldn't break the link, but what you could do with a 50 is kink it. Is as it's starting to feed, you basically kink one round, and then it won't feed into the feed tray. The link will break when the round before it fires off, and boom, you have no more rounds feeding into the feed tray. So even with the 50, you're still taught that if you have a runaway gun, you can kink the belt, and it will facilitate stopping the feed. So 60, you could actually break the link. It's light enough that you could break the link. With the 50, if you can't break the link, you just kink it, and then it basically runs up short, and the belt will break.
From dumbass officers on a good day, and he sure as hell isn't about to risk a live round exploding in his face on a bad day. So he responds as eloquently as possible when he says, quote, "F you, if you want to open it up, come up here and open it up, but I'm not going to."
Get the f out of my car, go back to the valley, rookie.
Not even 1 month later, Steve and Eve found themselves in another convoy headed towards Pleiku, except this time, Eve's running point as the lead gun truck. As they're riding along, Steve sees what looks like smoke coming towards him, and then it hits him, oh shit, that's a rocket trail. It misses the cab, clears the door, and slams into the steel plating on the gun box, and somehow, it doesn't wound Steve at all.
Wow!
In the confusion of all this, the lead 5-ton cargo truck comes to a stop, which causes the truck behind him to stop, which forces Eva Destruction to also stop. And this is an absolute situation, the worst possible outcome. They are being attacked from both sides of the road in an L-shaped ambush. Rockets are flying, satchel charges are being tossed, machine guns are singing, and about 50 NVA soldiers have them pinned down in a massive 400-meter kill zone only a half a mile away from safety. Guys, a lesser crew would have buckled under the pressure, but the NVA didn't realize that Steve and the crew of Eve woke up today and chose violence. So these guys are about to have a really, really bad time.
Should we turn it round and run them into our backup?
No! We're good! We bang it!
Eve swings his guns around and manages to hold its own until gun trucks Iron Butterfly and Ace of Spades, along with 2 other gun jeeps, get in on the action. However, in a stroke of bad luck, an AK-47 round manages to nick one of Steve's 50 cal hand grips, which ricochets off of it and it hits him in the arm. Let's try that again. Steve gets loaded into a Jeep and taken to a nearby fire base while the ambush is still actively going on. About 15 minutes into the ambush, 3 APCs show up with even more firepower, but even with all of that, the fight continues for another 25 minutes. In total, this ambush lasted a continuous 40 minutes with 1 US driver killed, 8 wounded, and 5 confirmed enemy killed. For his actions that day, Steve earned a Bronze Star medal with V-Device, and he was determined to stay with Eve until he either rotated home or the enemy took him out, whichever came first. Alright, so it is now May 24th, 1969, and Eva Destruction is back at it again. This time, she's escorting some fuel tankers through an area called VC Village, and just like last time, they get ambushed by a sudden rocket strike. Eve manages to roll off the side of the road, but this fight is far from over. The NVA are opting for maximum destruction today, and they start targeting a nearby fuel pipeline. They fire tracer rounds into the line, causing a stream of burning fuel to turn a couple of nearby trucks into bonfires. From here, the enemy begins to swarm the road right in front of Eve, and they start chucking satchel charges into those burning trucks. Steve knows he has to do something, and since all those trucks that they've been blowing up are now empty, he then proceeds to unload his guns into them in an attempt to drive the enemy back. Steve is giving it his all, and he is fully exposing himself while returning fire. Unfortunately, 3 AK rounds manage to find their mark to his shoulder and chest, and yet, despite his wounds, he stays in the fight. Now, while all of this is going on, the 8th Group commander is circling overhead in a helicopter, and this man is on the radio giving orders as if he is right there in the shit with them. And for whatever reason, this seriously pisses Steve off.
It's war!
Steve is literally on ground spreading the word of John Moses Browning like it's a new religion. He's got trucks burning, he's got wounded bleeding out. Hell, he's been shot not once, not twice, but 3 times. And the thought that is running through his mind right now, seeing that commander overhead is, quote, I could shoot this f***er down with these 50s if he would just get close enough.
Stop.
Okay. That is a man who is... Understandably, that is a man who is like, fuck officers, they need to fuck off out of this war and let us do our job. This is why so many NCOs fucking hate the officers.
Buzzing in my f***ing ear!
After a while, they managed to fight off the attack and secure the kill zone. The colonel was able to land safely about 5 minutes later, after which Steve is finally medevaced out, earning his 3rd Purple Heart. And honestly, that Purple Heart was just a testament to how Steve was harder than woodpecker lips, because as his driver put it, quote, I thought Steve was dead. I've never seen so much blood in that truck before. 4 days.
No. His driver conveniently forgot that Steve is the main character. Understandable mistake. I mean, you know, you can't always recognize them, but something's gonna happen, and then you're gonna realize, oh, that's the main character. I shouldn't have had to worry about that. Please, sir, carry on.
Days later, on May 28th, 1969, Steve only had 11 days left on his tour, so they decided to go ahead and just send him home due to the severity of his wounds.
Just want to say congrats on a lifetime of kicking ass.
Thanks. I'm not dead yet.
The very next month, the 523rd got a new company commander named Captain McCarty. And whether or not it was directly related to losing Steve or not, we just can't be sure. The simple fact is that Captain McCarty inherited a company with 0 morale. The 523rd, once a true force to be reckoned with, was down to less than a platoon's worth of drivers. His first sergeant was so that McCarty had to relieve him within 2 weeks of arriving. And not long after that, the company received 80 brand new soldiers who all needed training.
What a shit show.
Oof.
What a fucking shit show.
But as the old saying goes, not all heroes wear capes, they wear E4 rank, and that's when Roger D. Champ enters the chat. Initially assigned as a clerk typist for the 8th Group Commander, Champ really didn't like that job, and after a couple of weeks, he was transferred to the 523rd. Captain McCarty was seriously impressed with the cut of his cloth, describing him as a real ass kicker. He was quickly made an acting sergeant, and soon after that, he was made 1st Platoon's platoon sergeant. Okay, you know what? I take back what I said earlier.
Nice.
This has got to be the most E4 shit we've seen thus far. Little old E4 Champ was placed in an E7 position with a whole ass lieutenant to bully and an entire platoon to run. If we needed any further proof that the E4 Mafia not only exists, but is alive and thriving, then let's add this one to the list.
And he forgot something. Leave us not forget the E4 Mafia, the ones that run this shit, baby. Let's never forget who actually runs the shit around there.
Sorry, those internalized rants got the best of me again. Anyway, while all of this E4 Mafia monarchy was going on, all of the gun trucks were in a bad way. With EVA Destruction being the only functional gun truck left, Champ received even more E4 superpowers when he was also made the NCOIC of the Eve.
Oh, come on!
Okay, seriously, how much more power can you give one E4? Sorry, I know, holster the rant, stay on topic. Anyway, one gun truck wasn't gonna cut it, so they began cannibalizing whatever they could, and they threw together the gun trucks Uncle Meat and True Grit, which later was renamed Black Widow. Jumping ahead to January 4th, 1970, and Eve's got another mission. A westbound convoy is riding along the infamous QL-19 divided into 2 serials. Eve was riding in the 2nd serial as the lead gun truck with Uncle Meat bringing up the rear. It was a beautiful day, not a single cloud in the sky when the lead serial passed.
Hold up. Hold up. Hold up. Is Papa Meat a history buff? Does anybody know? Is Papa Meat something of a history buff? I am legit curious right now if this is where he came up with his name. Did he going through Vietnam history books and saw the badass gun truck named Uncle Meat and said, I like it, and decided to call himself Papa Meat? I mean, him and the Unsub Boys he came up with Meat Canyon first. Okay. Even if he came up with Meat Canyon first, he still goes by Papa Meat. And we all know how tight him and the Unsub Boys are. And they love their military history. I've gotta wonder if I'm legit curious right now if there's some correlation between Papa Meat choosing his name and maybe he heard about the gun truck Uncle Meat and said, I like it, and just changed the uncle to Papa. Papa Meat, if you're out there, please tell me if I'm right. And thank you for the tier 1, King Petty.
Bringing up the rear. It was a beautiful day, not a single cloud in the sky, when the lead serial passed a small ridge with the Buddhist temple on it. The Viet Cong waited for the first part of the convoy to pass by and then fired an RPG at the middle gun truck. The hit was so hard that the only thing left holding the hood on were the windshield hinges, and the driver's side door was blown clean off. Actually, you might want to get your facts straight. Earlier you said they were fighting the NBA, and now you're saying they're fighting the Viet Cong? Which is it? Why don't you read a book or something before you make these videos? Actually, most of the time gun truckers just refer to them as the enemy and not Viet Cong or NVA. Maybe it was because they didn't always have time to make a positive ID. Maybe it was because their ambushers were always firing from a dense tree line. Or more than likely, they just didn't give a shit who it was. Newsflash, a bullet doesn't care who you're fighting for.
Nope.
And if you weren't fighting for the US of A, neither did the gun truckers. So you and your shirt can shut up. Anyway, the gun trucks Cold Sweat and Lady Be Good moved up to the unnamed middle gun truck to provide some support. The gun trucks in the kill zone went through numerous boxes of ammo before they were able to finally cease fire. The convoy commander, Lieutenant Hemberg, drove his Jeep complete with twin 7.62 machine guns, very nice, into the kill zone when the fire picked up again, this time focused directly on his Jeep. All that enemy fire knocked out his radio and machine guns, but somehow none of them hit Hemberg or his driver. Although from their point of view, I'm pretty sure they thought that LT had been taken out. As Daddy Fatty Electrician likes to remind us, officers are basically the regulator on the military's ass-whooping machine. And with that regulator supposedly removed, everyone went full-on FUVC with their gun trucks, and that ended the fight pretty damn quick. Copious amounts of come one, come all, here's some 50 for y'all tends to have that effect on people. After the fight ended, a medevac helicopter landed, and Lieutenant Himberg even made them take the wounded Vietnamese civilians, despite that being strictly against Army policy. Now, no sooner had everyone given props to LT for defying the higher-ups and doing the right thing, the chopper lifted off and mortar rounds started pouring in. They held out for another half an hour under this new barrage before Eva Destruction and Uncle Meat finally fought their way up and joined the fight. From Sergeant Champ's perspective, the mortar and rocket fire was so intense that it looked like raindrops hitting that rice paddy across the way. It was by far the worst ambush that he had ever seen, and as soon as he reached the kill zone, he called in for air support. Gunslinger, this is Eva Destruction. Listen, man, we need help now. We are on QL-19. There's like a Buddhist temple by us. Listen, I need you to get here now and bring some rain on these motherfuckers. Boy, you crazy. Get out of my ear. Hold on, I got a call. Hold on. Eva Destruction, this is Gunslinger. Listen, man, the weather has got us completely socked in. Nothing I can do for you. Over. Bro, are you freaking kidding me right now? It is the clearest I've ever seen Vietnam like ever. I swear. It is so clear I can see you about to fire up the grill from here. I'm sorry, Eve. You're coming in broken and unreadable. Try again when this weather breaks. Out. Hey, man, don't...
God, see it. I fucking hate how accurate that probably was. That, oh my God, I could legit see that being reasonably historically accurate with some of the shit that the Flyboys would tend to pull in Vietnam. Oh, damn it. Yeah, well, it's not cool. It's funny, but sad how accurate that might actually be. And Autistic, thank you for the tier 3. Thank you so very much.
Don't burn mine. I said I wanted a medium rare. This motherfucker. Well, this sucks, and as my dad would say, the only thing for Champ to do now is to don his plot armor and go to work. Champ positions Eve so that his forward gun has a clear shot, and he starts laying waste to this temple. Things were going well until they weren't, because a truck from the 4th Infantry Division was in a hurry and figured his best course of action was to try to run straight through the kill zone. As the driver was speeding around the Eve, a rocket came screaming in and nailed his truck, wounding the driver. Everyone kept pouring out fire, with rockets and mortars flying all around, with one of them even landing near Eve and blowing one of the gunners clean out of the gun box. Champ jumped down to check on him, but because he had left his flak vest open, he now had a sucking chest wound. Instinctively, Champ began rendering first aid, and dude is so locked in that he didn't realize that the little pieces of asphalt that are peppering his face meant that he was directly being shot at. Now, once he realized this, he figured that the only place those shots could be coming from was a banana grove across the way. Champ then drags the wounded gunner to safety along with this random Vietnamese guy that he finds. Just happening at this point. So, and then he just climbs into his gun box. He gets all the other gunners online, and they just start mowing down that banana grove.
Accurate! Fucking accurate!
And this had the desired effect of forcing the Viet Cong to get up and start running away. And guys, I keep saying it, and I'm gonna say it again. It is crazy how persuasive copious amounts of copper can truly be. The entire ambush had lasted more than 3 hours, and after it was all said and done, across the way, a Huey gunship finally shows up.
Oh, you motherfuckers.
Captain McCarty was so impressed with his men that he submitted Champ and Staff Sergeant Lee, the NCOIC of Uncle Meat, for Silver Stars. And since truck drivers very rarely received approval for valor awards, Captain McCarty wrote award packets so thick that his superiors straight up could not ignore what they had done. And clearly it worked, because they both received their Silver Stars that they both rightfully deserved.
Hell yes. Hell yes.
From here, a number of different Eve NCOICs would come and go, but one thing never changed: Eve's refusal to die. She went through multiple configurations, survived hit after hit after hit, and even built up such a bounty on her that she became a constant target for both the VC and NBA. And in true military dark humor fashion, if they were going to be the biggest ambush target on the road, well, they figured they might as well stand out even more by making Eve's artwork even bolder. By 1970, gun truck design and doctrine had fully matured. The days of extreme experimentation were just straight up over. These guys knew exactly what they were about. They knew exactly what worked and exactly what they needed to do to get the job done. Even the relationship between officers and enlisted improved among the gun truck crews. This late in the war, there was a shortage of transportation officers, but with the drawdown of infantry divisions, there was now an excess of infantry officers, and some of them got assigned to gun truck companies. Now, why the Army did this is a mystery, but here's what we do know. As combat arms officers, all of them felt that their place was out on the road in the middle of the shit with their men. These guys weren't out there riding in the relative safety of a Jeep that posed little to no threat to the enemy. These guys chose to ride in the gun trucks, the biggest, baddest, most obvious targets on the road. That takes some serious balls, and I've got to commend them for that. And not only were those lieutenants respected, but so was their company commander. Captain Donald Voitritter, and apologies if I'm pronouncing that wrong, commanded the 523rd, and he often did the most un-officer-like thing that you can do. He would have informal, candid conversations with his men after an ambush.
No way.
What a novel idea for an officer to do, right? How about we stop pretending that we're God's gift to humanity and actually talk to our troops? Man, it's almost like they're the subject matter experts at their jobs or something, but what do I know? But arguably, the most significant contribution that Captain V had to this story came on May 31st, 1971. Captain V sent a formal request to the Logistics Chief Brigadier General Post requesting that gun truck Eva Destruction be shipped back to the U.S. in order to preserve this historic vehicle. He chose ETH because this truck represented the combat-proven design in its final form. The request was approved, all of its weapons and ammo were crated up and stored in its gun box, and it was then shipped out. Eva Destruction arrived at Fort Eustis, Virginia on July 11th, 1971, and was the only gun truck, the only one, that was shipped back to the U.S. completely intact. Due to a lack of indoor space, ETH sat outside of the U.S. Army Transportation Museum's ground for many years, completely exposed to weather. Eventually, funding came through, and the museum got renovated, at which time Eva Destruction was fully restored and moved indoors.
Oh, yes!
Girl, will you let me finish? I am almost done. So what's the key takeaway here? Well, how about the fact that if we don't learn from history, we're doomed to repeat it. Convoys will always be hunted, supply lines will always be attacked, and every time we rediscover that fact like it's something new, soldiers die paying lessons that we've already learned. So here's the point in all this. Doctrine shouldn't restart at zero with every single war. Gun trucks and convoy security tactics need a permanent place in the U.S. Army because the next time we forget that fact, that bill is gonna come due in blood. Now, as always, you guys, I appreciate y'all watching. And if you want to support me and what we're doing here, then go grab yourself some tactically acquired merch at tangoalpha.store. I'm gonna go get started on the next video. Out.
7 Nineveh gun trucks. You badass fucking warriors.
Girl, will you let me film? Okay, all right. I am almost done. Will you just wait a second?
Oh,
bye.
Doggo. Such a good doggo. Okay, that was gloriously fucking insane. Holy hell, that was incredible. I had, I had never heard of gun trucks before. I did not even know these things existed. And holy crap, were they badass. God damn. Those things were badass death machines.